Welcome to the place where we learn about improv, 'cause public speaking can take you so far. Improv speaking, say yes and flex your creative thinking. Improv speaking, say yes and flex your creative thinking.
Woohoo! Welcome everyone to the Improvly Speaking podcast. Welcome back if you've been joining us listening to our previous episodes. And if you're joining for the first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. You are in for a special treat today for this episode. Today, we are talking all about medical improv and healthcare improv. And you're like, what? There's a thing called medical improv? I had no idea. How is that a thing? What is that? I know you have so many questions, and our guest today will answer all of these questions and more. And I can't wait to jump in. Our guest today, too, will be talking all about improv, public speaking, performance, communication, and creativity, because he does all of those things at some point in his job or his side job or his daily life. So this will be a super fun episode. And hey, let's get to it, shall we? I want to introduce you to our very special guest today, Dr. Michael Smith. Dr. Michael Smith is an attending physician of internal medicine at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. He studied at Creighton University School of Medicine and did his residency for internal medicine at Tulane University in 2012. In 2014, Mike began taking level 1 improv classes. Realizing early on that the skills learned through improv could help him as a hospitalist, Michael began implementing those skills at work. The result was more enjoyable work, better interactions with patients, and more effective teaching. In 2018, he started doing healthcare improvisation workshops and created Healthcare Improv, which is an Omaha, Nebraska-based startup specializing in improv training as a communications tool for healthcare professionals. Hence, Healthcare Improv, Medical Improv. So cool. He also currently performs and teaches classes at the Backline in Omaha. I can't wait to talk and chat. Please welcome Dr. Michael Smith.
Thank you so much, Dana. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I am very excited to talk about all things improv and how it relates to my job in the healthcare field and also in just my day-to-day life as well.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you on, Mike. I can't wait to chat. And I want to tell our listeners a little bit of how we met, because I think it's a really cool story too. So we met on LinkedIn through the South by Southwest panel picker. And so how that works is when you submit for a conference session for South by Southwest, you enter into what is called the panel picker. And then for like a month, you have to promote your session on panel picker and encourage people to vote for your session. And that counts for 30% of your score to see if you can be selected as a session presenter, all these things. And the funny thing is, so I posted on LinkedIn that I submitted a session for panel picker, please vote for me. And I did a full search on panel picker, like improv, looking up improv to see what other sessions were submitted. And I'll just say their search function wasn't the best, because all I kept getting was improve. Like, and every session says improve, improve, improve. So I didn't see any other improv sessions posted. And so I posted on LinkedIn that I had my improv session, and it was the only improv session that was posted. And then you commented on it and you're like, oh, I submitted a session too. It's nice to see another improv session. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to change the language. Like, I'm not the only improv session. But it was so cool to see your session posted about medical improv. Mine was more just general improv for self-care. But what I will say about that is I was so impressed by how supportive you were, because you could have been like, you're not the only one that submitted about improv. Like, what are you talking about? But instead you were like, hey, you shared my post and you're like, hey, I submitted for panel picker, please vote for me. And while you're at it, vote for Dana's session too, because the more improv, the better. And I loved that support.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I think that's such a funny story because I also did the same thing. Like, as soon as the sessions came out, I was like, how many improv ones are available? And I did not see yours until I randomly came across it on LinkedIn. I was like, oh, this is cool. And so the, my first instinct was not like, oh, let's support that. Um, it was like, oh, how about this? And then I think I was reading about kind of coming from a place of abundance around that time.
Yeah.
So I was like, this should be the approach to this, because we are all doing kind of various work with using improv as a tool for education. And I really do think it benefits all of us to get more improv training in whatever venue, uh, for all of us. And truthfully, the results of the panel picker was that I was not accepted, but this kind of relationship and kind of learning what you're doing has been very productive. And I think, kind of cement maybe the next time my first instinct will be kind of that abundance approach as opposed to kind of searching for it. So that interaction was, so much more meaningful and will affect me, kind of how I approach everything.
I agree. Yeah, mine didn't get accepted either. I think they said there were 1,200 submissions, and that might have been just in the South by Southwest EDU. I couldn't tell if it
Yeah.
was throughout all of South by Southwest or just EDU, and then South by Southwest had another 1,200 sessions. So they had quite a bit. I understood why, but like you said, it was a win. Like we formed this relationship. I met people from it just by posting like hashtags SXSW, like you meet people through it. And I gotta say, like, I felt really cringy doing that panel picker thing because I hate like vote for me, vote for this thing. It feels really unnatural. But like you said, just meeting you through it and then we've connected and forming meaningful relationships, that's a win. I definitely count it as a win.
Yeah, I feel the same way about self promotion. I feel bad. There are a whole bunch of people in my life who will be getting South by Southwest emails for the rest of their life. But as I said, kind of forming these relationships and hearing what other people are doing kind of with similar but different activities, I think that's great and makes kind of the self promotion, kind of promoting everyone and, just the ideas makes it a little bit easier. And, like I said, this has been quite fruitful, kind of seeing what you're doing and learning the stuff that you're interested in, the avenues you're taking.
Yeah, and I'm just blown away too by the improv community as a whole and how supportive they are. The Applied Improv Network has Friday sessions where everyone who teaches applied improv can join. And then we practice exercises and practice how to handle things, how to handle virtual versus in person. Any questions you have, you can put it out there. It is so cool to be a part of such a supportive community. I played sports growing up. I know you did too, Mike. And it's very competitive in the sports world. And I don't
Hmm.
think I've ever really been a part of such a supportive community. So this is new for me, and I'm just embracing all of it.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's a lot of negative aspects of social media, but I feel like every improviser, improv related activity that I find on social media has been, very beneficial to, just about everything that I do, both professionally and personally, and just seeing examples of people exploring ideas in different ways and supporting other people is a great example for me to do in my life as well. Because, yeah, I would say I was socialized in the kind of more sports approach, which served me well. But I think for a lot of these ideas, the kind of collaborative approach is definitely one of the benefits, and especially with social media, it's a great resource.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm still learning. Like I'm really watching and learning how to support better, not just in improv scenes, but just in life, how to support better, coming from this place of abundance, just sharing and giving. You know, that's a lifelong skill that we learn and we have to learn, and it is just so fruitful when you give and share.
Yeah, and as you said, I think one of the biggest lessons for me from improv is it's this small activity that you're practicing that is silly, but then when you apply it to bigger things, it has similarly great results. So, like you said, supporting your scene partner is kind of a improv aphorism, but you take that into your day to day life, you will get similarly great results, in my experience. But it may not be your first instinct, and so practicing it on an improv stage is a great way to kind of get it out there, or it's worthwhile to do when you practice it in the world.
Yeah, and I want to jump into your improv journey. And in your bio, it says your improv journey started in 2014. So, why did you sign up to take Improv 101 in the first place?
Yeah, I actually did not sign up. It was my wife who got me lessons for Christmas, and
Really?
it yeah, it was not something where I was like, hey, here's my list. I want improv lessons, couple socks, and some ties. It was just out of the blue that she got it for me for Christmas, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll give this a shot. I had lived in New Orleans for 5 years, where I did residency, and then I was a chief resident. Then I worked in my job that I currently have, but down there. And my wife and I are both from Omaha, and we moved back, which was, I love Omaha, and I always wanted to be in Omaha. At that time in my life, I was kind of disappointed about moving back to Omaha at that time. So we moved back to Omaha. I had tore my ACL just in New Orleans playing old man soccer, and
Oh
that
no.
was kind of my primary identity. I keep playing old man sports, and so combined with my identity of sports being severely hindered, moving back to Omaha, um, it hit me at a time in life where I wasn't expecting it, but was very open to new opportunities. And so then I just kind of kept doing it. It was a way for me to get out of the house once a week. I met some fun people that I still do improv with now. And I was actually at a conference in about 5 months into my improv training. And I told someone who was a bit of a mentor of mine that I was taking improv classes. And he's like, oh, I'm sure that helps you in your role as an academic hospitalist. And I was like, oh, yeah, of course. But I had no idea what he was talking about. And so I asked him to explain. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess so. And so from that point on, anytime I had a break in between classes, I would try to do a form of the exercises in my communication with people. The big one is a 3-line opener that we practice in class. And so that's just within 3 lines, you have to get the who, what, when, where, why, establish the relationship with your scene partner in 3 lines. And so in the hospital, patients meet so many doctors, so many nurses, so many just members of the healthcare field. So when I come in and introduce myself, I'm like the 100th person they've met at what is
Right.
kind of one of the worst days of their life, usually. And so they're not keeping tabs of who's who, who's managing what. And so I started kind of establishing who I was and what role I was playing and getting on the same page with them, making that a focus of the start of my conversation. And during that time, my patient satisfaction scores had the biggest jump of everyone in my group. And I was
Wow.
like, oh, that's fun. Like improv is really helping me. That was kind of my first response. But then my second response was like, I thought I was good at this already. Like I thought this was a
Right.
skill that like, why did I need to improve so much from that? But kind of from then on, I started inputting it more and more into my day-to-day practice.
And can I ask you just if you don't mind sharing, how old were you when you took your first improv class?
I was 31.
31. Okay. Oh, that was
Yeah.
actually me too. I was around 31 when I started mine too. Um, and have you had any improv or like theater background, drama background before?
No, no, no. I am the youngest of 6 kids, so like I craved attention, but never had a formal outlet for it. So yeah, I had no theater experience prior to that first class in
Okay.
any way, shape, or form.
I feel like we have a lot in common. I've torn my ACL 3 times. I hate to admit.
Yeah.
And yeah, playing volleyball, just jumping, and I just wasn't meant to leave the ground after 17 years old. Probably bad mechanics, lots of overtraining. That'll do
Yeah.
it. But yeah, I feel that pain of the ACL tear and rehab. But also, I can't pass up the opportunity to talk about our NOLA connection too, or should I say our Crescent City connection, which is a bridge
Yeah.
in New Orleans. My little pun there.
Yeah.
Um,
Nice.
but I think that's so cool. When you told me like you studied at Tulane and you lived there for 5 years, I was like, what? That's awesome. Like I love connections like that.
Yeah. Yeah. New Orleans is great. And it was such a great place to learn and train in the medical field. Just very nice people, very down to earth people. And just, it, it was an opportunity to do good. I feel like a lot of the patients that I was taking care of didn't really have anyone else or uh, any other outlet other than I worked at the large public hospital there, and so it was kind of a lot of people who really didn't have anywhere else to turn, and it was nice to connect with the citizens of New Orleans.
Yeah, and you still go back, right, for Mardi Gras?
Yep. I ride in one of the parades with a good friend of mine who I did residency with, and we were both chief residents together. And so, yeah, we ride in Bacchus on the Sunday before Mardi Gras. I forget the official term. Monday is Lundi Gras. I don't
Yeah, I
forget
don't
what
know
Sunday is
actually
called.
this Sunday Gras. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And my first son was born there. And so he's always talking about how he was born in New Orleans, and he, someone was driving by a hospital where their child was born, and my son piped it that I was born on the banks of the Mississippi River. And so he's got a real New Orleans spirit about him.
He's got that southern drama in his
Yeah.
bones. It
Yeah.
sounds like
Yeah.
I was born on the banks of the Mississippi River.
Yeah, exactly. And
What?
my friend asked me, like, what is he talking about? I was like, it's that the hospital Ochsner, and I think in Metairie, it does kind of overlook the Mississippi River. So kind of like it's
That's so
technically kind
funny.
of true, but made it sound like it's delivered at the side of the river by
Right.
me, which was not the case. If anyone else hears him.
I love that drama though. It just
Yeah.
the dramatics, the thematics. He's got it. Yeah.
Yeah, he
You
does.
can take him out of New Orleans, but he was born with it.
Yeah. Yeah. That stays.
Oh, that's great. And for our non-NOLA listeners, Bacchus is one of the biggest parades too that runs around Mardi Gras season. And just a side note, just to go on like my little Mardi Gras soapbox, the best time to go to Mardi Gras is actually like Friday to Monday. And I mean, Mardi Gras Day is fine. It's cool. There's a lot of traditions and customs. So it's cool to see once. But then if you've seen it, like you can actually leave on Mardi Gras Day. Then you don't have to see them clean up. So I actually recommend, which is so terrible of me. That's so spoiled. Like I don't want to see them clean up. I just want to go out on a high note. But really the best time to go is like that Friday to Monday span. It's so fun. And Endymion's on Saturday, Bacchus is on Sunday night. Those are great parades. If you like to catch beads and stuff, you will catch all the beads and stuff at those parades.
Yeah. Last year I was on the top of the float, and I about threw my shoulder out, like just bombing
Oh, no.
footballs throughout the city of New Orleans, which is great.
Yeah. It is, yeah, it's so much fun. And I'm writing this year too, an Iris, which rolls on Saturday morning at like 10 a.m. Saturday morning, but people show up for it. Don't worry. Like there will be
Oh
people
yeah,
to throw to.
me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I wrote in 2019 and had a 3-year gap with COVID and stuff. So excited to get back and do some more throws and just get back to Mardi Gras. I started to really appreciate it as an adult. As a kid, I was just like, this is what happens. This is what everyone does. Like, this is like the whole world is doing this. And then you grow
Yeah.
up and you realize, wait, for everyone else, Mardi Gras is just a Tuesday. Like they're working. What?
Yeah.
Um, and as a kid, you like want to catch like stuffed animals and beads, which is very interesting mindset in itself because it's just junk basically. Like you want to catch all the junk as a kid, and then you grow up, you're like, okay, I don't need junk. But you see the floats pass and the bands and the costumes, the pageantry, the traditions. Like I really started to appreciate it the last time I went as an adult. I love it.
Yeah. And adults still get that mindset. They may come in with like, oh, I don't need any of this. But like you said, once they get out on the parade route, they start gunning for stuff. They
Oh
have
yeah.
an agenda. Like I want some cups. I want only light up beads.
Yes, light up beads are a big thing. Iris, our
Yeah.
thing is sunglasses. People want
Oh yeah.
sunglasses.
Yep.
Hmm. Yeah, all the glittery light up things, the better.
Yeah. And because I've gone through that same mental thing. Like I don't really need much, but like by the middle of the parade, I'm like screaming, hey, 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 cup.
Yeah, throw me something, mister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once you're out there, it's a different ball game.
Yeah. And do you take your kids out or you'll take them at some point?
We took them. It's been a while since we took them. It's been solo missions, just
Yeah,
because it is kind of a process getting back there. But
for sure.
it is great for kids up in the neighborhood by where we lived. It's kind of basically like a citywide tailgate, and it
Hmm.
is more appropriate to reach for things if you're holding a kid. It doesn't look as weird to onlookers to see
Right.
adults grabbing.
Stuffed animal for the
Yeah,
kid, not for me. For
yeah.
the kid,
No,
I
this is
swear. I swear.
entirely. Yeah. So it is. It's great in all facets. If you have, if we'll take all of our kids back at some point, but it's good just to go with me or just me and my wife.
Yeah. And again, for our non-NOLA listeners, we do not parade, like floats do not roll on Bourbon Street. So you can go to Mardi Gras and not go to Bourbon Street, and you will not miss out on anything there.
Yeah,
So you do not have to go to Bourbon Street if you go to Mardi Gras. There are some family-friendly places too.
yeah. I feel like Bourbon Street's like Bourbon Street year round. Like it could be not
Yes.
Mardi Gras and you can still get that energy.
Yeah, but I've had people be like, "Oh, so you like parade down Bourbon Street?" It's like, no, I don't go to Bourbon
No,
Street.
yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
stay far away. Like in college, I took friends down, and they wanted to go, so I went. I'm like, never again, never
yeah.
again. Like, I'm good. I did it
That's
once. Ugh.
that's what we would do is we'd have the cab drop us off on Canal Street and then walk on Bourbon Street to like Frenchman or wherever else we were going.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
Experience
fun
it
to walk
once.
down. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll get back to our topic at hand, improv, but
Yeah.
I love talking NOLA. I love the NOLA
Yeah.
connection. Didn't even know, of course, right when we
Right.
connected. And then it's so cool that you have this. And I can't wait to look for you on the parade route when I'm there in a few months.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. It'll be great.
Which, you do a lot of improvising on the float. I will say, like, you might
That's
come
true.
in with a
Figuring out.
plan. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna pace myself. I'm gonna throw a few beads here and there, and then you get going, and you're like just throwing footballs and stuffed animals. So improv
Yeah.
comes in with float
Yeah.
riding too.
Yeah. I say yes to everyone. I just start giving them whatever they want.
Yes, yes. So back to improv.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll shift gears again. So you were taking improv classes and kind of seeing it play out in your work life. You're like, oh, this actually helps. So what led you to want to start Healthcare Improv then?
Yeah. Yeah. So as I said, I kind of was doing it more in my interactions and kind of the idea of yes anding people, just saying yes to whatever their reality is, and then adding my contribution, which I think just adds to better patient interactions, better colleague interactions. And then I started doing some improv exercises with my team. Many months I have a team of 3 residents and 2 to 3 medical students. And so just at the start of each day, we would do an improv exercise in the hallway that initially took some like breaking down of comfort zones to get through that. But
Uh-huh.
once people did, it became a highlight of our time working together, and people would put it on my evaluations that we had fun in addition to the patient care that we were doing. And I kind of incorporated into using low inference language. So, like when we step out on stage, we shouldn't use words that people can think about any which way. We should be very clear, and there's the clarity there can really help things go much smoother. And so I would teach that to the people that I had under my on my service for months at a time. In 2017, I had 5 cancer diagnoses in my family. Like it happened month after month after
Oh
month.
my God.
And so we're a big family, and kind of had avoided a lot of big health issues up until that point. And so I just saw myself and my family members on the other side of healthcare. And so it really put a spotlight on the importance of communication and how all the healthcare team members interact with the patients. And so seeing smart, well intentioned members of the healthcare field cause harm to my family in the way that they communicated
Mm.
was an eye opener for me, and also caused me to reflect like, when were times where I may have done that, and what more can I do to help prevent this? And so it had been kind of percolating in my mind prior to that. But I feel like improv and the lessons from improv are essential ways to get better at those skills and keep developing those skills. Even if you're pretty good at it now, I think they can make you better. And if you're not great at those skills, they can help you get better. And so that's kind of what pushed me. Said like, I need to be teaching more people than the 3 or 4 people every couple months that are on my service, or that are nearby. It's worthwhile to spread the ideas and the skill set to a broader audience. And we have a peer mentoring group. And I had mentioned that I had wanted to do that. And one of my colleagues was like, oh, you should talk to so and so at faculty development. She may be able to help you. And so I did. She's like, hey, next month we're doing a series on helping the attendings become better public speakers. Can you do the body language portion of that using stuff from
Nice.
improv? Yeah. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I could definitely do that. At the time, I would say I was just a horrible public speaker, which
Oh
I
no.
thought was so funny that I was going to get up and talk about public speaking while myself being a horrible public speaker. And so I just kind of, and also at the time, I wasn't really advertising to other coworkers that I did improv or I performed improv. It was kind of like a secret thing. And then just as it came up, I was like, oh, we're just doing this to do this, rather than like hey, everyone, I do improv. So I did that, and it went okay. My voice cracked once or twice, but not too bad.
Well, you were
But
focusing on body language. You weren't focusing on
that's true.
voice. So
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Uh, my inner critic was not that generous to me that night after
Yeah.
thinking about that.
Mine's never very generous either. I get that.
Yeah. And so the public speaking aspect has just been part of the journey of kind of getting the mess. Like, I have to get better at public speaking if I want to get these ideas to a broader audience within the healthcare field. And so I've improved steadily since then, and the just kind of the practice. And then in preparation for the lecture that I was giving on public speaking, you kind of learn a lot of skills related to it, and then almost all of them are related to improv, or like pull from improv
Mm-hmm.
ideas. So like improv is easier for me. Like getting up on stage and just making stuff up is kind of easy for me because it seems low risk. It's very easy for me. Like I just made it up. Like you get what you get.
Right. Low
Uh,
expectations, right? Like, I'm making this up. Come on, give me a
yeah,
break. Yeah.
right, exactly. Giving a lecture about information to colleagues, that still kind of gets the adrenaline rushing. But the skills from improv definitely feed into the tricks and tips that most people give for public speaking.
That's so cool. And how that was a few years ago. How do you feel like your sessions go now? Do you still get nervous, or you're kind of past that point?
Yeah, still get nervous, but in
Yeah,
a
which
good
is
way.
normal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I get excited for it more than, and I just want it to be the best it can be for the audience and give them something that they can take away and go out into the world and be the best healthcare providers that they can be. That's more rather than, oh God, what if my voice cracks or I screw up? And so, and a lot of that again is from improv. The I the confidence that improv provided allowed me to get better at public speaking, because again, you're using the same skills. Like you're doing these things not so you can look funny on stage, it's so you can create laughter and have fun with your scene partners, with the audience. And it's a lot easier to make that shift focus for me.
Yeah, letting go of perfection has been huge for me in my public speaking, because I came up through Toastmasters, which is a great way to help conquer your fear of public speaking, but they're very focused on your ums and ahs and filler words, and they count them, so you're like, oh my god, like I said 10 ums and ahs in a 2-minute thing, like that's terrible. And so you kind of focus on being perfect, quote unquote perfect, and not having any filler words. Well, then I'm not focused on my mission and message of actually helping people and delivering information and inspiring them. I'm more focused on, did I pause here and like not say any filler words? So it kind of took me down a different perfection direction. So taking improv has helped me regain that focus of, I said 5 ums. I say a ton of likes in these podcast episodes. I hear them all the time and say, okay, well, we'll improve at some point. But it's just letting go of that perfection piece. None of my speeches or presentations are ever quote unquote perfect, but do I
Yeah,
reach the goal? That's more important to me now.
yeah, yeah. That's great. I think there's benefit to both. Like I would not say all the ums you want, but if that becomes
Exactly. Yes.
your focus, it can take away from the message, as you said.
If your message is good and you're engaging and inspiring, but you say a lot of ums and ahs, people won't notice. People will
Yeah,
be more into what you're saying, how you're making them feel. But if you're more nervous and the ums and ahs are like affecting your stage presence, your body language, that's when they start to notice the excessiveness of the filler words. That's been my
yeah,
stance lately.
yeah. I completely agree, and I think everything I've read says something similar. So that's great.
Yeah. What I love too about facilitating improv exercises and workshops and sessions is, yes, like we have to talk a lot, like getting people to feel psychologically safe and comfortable enough to do the exercises and understand what we're doing. That it has a speaking part to it. But then you introduce the exercises, which is an important part. Like you have to introduce them well, explain them well. But then the participants go off and experience them on their own in groups or pairs. And then they come back and you debrief and you ask, hey, what did you all experience here? The key is you've got to allow silence, which has been a big learning thing. Allowing for silence, it can take up to 7 seconds or more for people to respond. Just allow that silence. Don't talk through it. But then it's more interactive. So it's not just me having to talk for an hour. It's me explaining and then giving you the space to try it out and experience it and form your own opinions and lessons learned and takeaways from what you experienced.
Yeah, I completely agree. When I first started doing the workshops, I was like, okay, I have 20 minutes, and then after that, everyone else they're all gonna talk. Now it's like I'll set it up however long it takes, but then I'm excited to hear because every time, even if it's the same workshop more or less repeated, I think I learned something new from the group.
Yeah.
It could be like a group of physicians, but each new group of physicians, I learned something new. Or it's the case with every group I do it with here on campus. Like each person has an insight that I had not even thought about. And writing that down is such a joy, especially when you compare, like hearing the laughter while they're doing the exercises and then hearing a new insight that just kind of came out of those moments is very meaningful for me and something that I just love about doing the workshops.
Yeah. Well, and something that I learned just from talking with you is that healthcare improv is not just for physicians and nurses and faculty. You do these workshops for all staff at hospitals and such, right?
Yeah. So it started just, I took what I learned the most from improv as a physician, and then I made those workshops and sent it out as part of faculty development. And then the people that came were like, hey, I'm with the business office, I'm with the lab. And so I was like, oh, okay. And so just kind of how it's developed has been for everyone within the healthcare world, because I think it is a unique perspective. Each role has a unique perspective, and having the interprofessional group, I think, is wildly beneficial to go through, especially improv exercises, as a way to just see new perspectives from people doing work that is obviously affected by the work that you do.
Well, and you mentioned in communication, you're with your at least your nurses, your doctors, you're focusing on kind of patient-facing communications, but these other roles, they might talk with patients too, or they're talking amongst their teams. So these communication skills can apply to many different facets and aspects of their roles.
My biggest supporters on campus are with the library, the
Really?
librarians. Oh yeah, there were a handful that took those original workshops back in 2018. It again caused me to retool how I thought about this and how I was approaching it. And so workshops after 2018 were, I had previous attendees help facilitate the new round of workshops. And so I send out an email to about 100 people every time a new workshop comes, and almost always there are 3 or 4 librarians that come, and they're very thankful, and they're like, I use this here, and so it's a lot of fun. That people, it's not always the people that you think that are going to be like, yeah, I'm here for the improv workshop. It's a wide range of people and personalities, and that's kind of the setting the safe space talk at the beginning. That's one of my main points. Is we're not here to turn introverts into extroverts. Like if you're an introvert at the beginning of the workshop, you will leave an introvert. It's just about communicating in the way that you want to. It's the kind of hope that they get from the experience.
Yeah, I love that. I want to ask you, because I see a lot of research, or a good bit of research coming out now about improv studies, uh, in the medical field and then outside of the medical field. And I've seen a study, and I can put it in the show notes too, but just like a medical school is starting to use it as an elective for medical students to take that class as they're taking their other classes to learn these skills before they even go into being residents and interning and such. So what do you feel like the perception is and reception is of medical improv? Like how are people starting to accept this now as a way to learn and grow your skills?
Yeah, it's it's no one is handing it to us, because I've had these conversations like, oh, this is actually really beneficial, or these are the ways that it will help XYZ population. And so it is becoming a lot more widespread and accepted. There are a lot more friendly ears, I would say. There are some people are just like, no, I'm too serious for that, and that's fine. I'm not speaking ill
Yeah,
of them.
certainly.
And then there are some people who are just like on board right away, like don't even have to finish the sentence. They're like, yes, let's do it. Most people tend to be in the middle, where they're like, I need some categorical data and objectives, and how is this going to fit into specific parts of our curriculum. And I've had a number of those discussions here at Nebraska, and those, I think, have helped me make the workshops better, because early on I was talking with someone here who's like, yeah, I think they had a improviser come talk to the unit-based medical directors, and it was fun, but no one understood why we were doing it. And so
Hmm.
like, you have enough of those conversations of people being like, but why are we doing this again? That's really helped me make sure that people have tangible, I'm going to walk away with X, or I need to make sure that connection is being made from kind of the silly activities that we're doing here to the more serious activities that are often required.
Well, and that's the thing too. So I do more like corporate improv trainings, like team building, more in the corporate space with departments or teams, how to better interact with teams. And what I always like to say is, like, yes, there are rules, processes, and procedures to follow. I'm not saying to go rogue and say yes and
Yeah.
just burn it all to the ground or do whatever you want. Of course, like that's not what we're saying, but it, I could see, especially in the medical field. I mean, there are rules, processes, procedures, consequences for not following those things. So it can be hard to say like, well, we're going to try something really new and innovative and kind of different, off the beaten path. But it's cool to hear. At least there's starting to be some acceptance, and but we're always going to still have to do a little bit of convincing there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that convincing is good for me, and clarifying those things, like the improv rule, there are no mistakes. In
Right.
healthcare, there are very clearly mistakes. And so that's not the message of today. It's not what I hope people leave with. But the idea, kind of similar to that perfectionism, like, it's okay not to know something. It's better to say, I don't know this, or I don't have to be a superhero. I'm going to ask someone, or maybe another person has a better way to look at it. And then just the idea that mistakes will happen. I think that's, healthcare, unfortunately, is a situation where there are mistakes or unfortunate outcomes. And having the ability to look at yourself and say, how can I prevent this from happening again in the future? What are the ways that we can acknowledge this reality and then move forward in the best way possible? Those are absolutely critical in healthcare. Those skills are critical in healthcare. And most people in healthcare are kind of type A, that sports competitive mindset,
Yes.
which has served us well for most of our lives. But so it takes kind of a frame shift to move to that. Oh, like, okay, I'm a part of a system, and I can help that. I can, no matter what happens, I can still think of how to make that system better, including myself. And I think that benefits patients much more, and is ultimately a better way to work for healthcare professionals.
Yeah, when I do my sessions, I'm and in this podcast too, I focus a lot on like creativity and how having a creative outlet can help you. So I understand too, again, like in healthcare, you might not have a lot of room to be creative. Uh, And that might not be a takeaway. That's probably not a takeaway you focus on. Uh, what do you see are the main takeaways and outcomes that people get from your sessions?
Yeah. So the creativity aspect, I think it is a lot to ask someone in healthcare to come to a workshop and like say you are now going to be creative. And
Yes,
so
of course.
I feel like the improv aspect enough can make people leery. And so like
Yes.
that 2 hour workshop that is just the goal is them to be themselves and look for ways to communicate and listen the way that they hope to. I'm not trying to change them, but if they come just as themselves, that's more than enough. When I teach the improv class at the backline, there I'm looking to push them creatively, and oftentimes, and I remember this too, when I was taking classes, I felt mentally exhausted after it, but that kind of going through
Yes.
the process of pushing yourself creatively is what has helped me um, to push myself creatively in all the other educational aspect things that I do. So I have a handful of other educational activities that are not necessarily improv related, but improv and kind of pushing myself creatively has made those better as well. And so for just a general workshop, it's come as you are. Are you communicating how you want to? What are some concrete steps you can use to connect better? The main goal is connection. Like, are you able to connect with
Hmm.
patients, colleagues, etc.? And then the class is we talk about healthcare things, but it's mostly helping them learn the skills of improv and then be able to reflect on how that would connect to their lives.
So you're not doing suggestions off of like healthcare scenarios. It's more just like general talk and exercises, and then you'll discuss later how it applies.
Yeah. So the way I set up the workshops is it's kind of graded into more what I call theatery type things. So eventually it will get to performing a scene, but it starts off with a lot of establishing the environment and safety and those things.
I love the focus on communications too, and just better communications, more efficient communications. So, in my experience as just a hospital goer, I show up for my appointments. It seems like you get kind of rushed out or they're busy. Like there's a lot of appointments back to back to back. I think everyone's mindful of, okay, I can't stay too long and talk for too long because I've got five more appointments waiting for me
Right.
after. At least that's my assumption. Um, so these communication skills, it's not really necessarily, it doesn't lead to more length in the appointment time, but it's more efficiency in the appointment time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there are studies about all sorts of things that you can do to make a patient feel like you're in the room longer. So, like sitting makes the patient seem like it's 5 to 10 minutes longer than actual time. So
Really
like if you go in and
interesting.
sit with the patient, they'll perceive you being there longer. And so that's the skills of improv are kind of you kind of have an idea of what you want, but may not have the whole story. And so you go in there and you try to connect with them and kind of build a reality together. And so if a patient, and to do that, you have to listen, you have to acknowledge what they say, and you have to add to that scene. Similarly, if I go into a patient's room, that like if I connect with them in a quick
Hmm.
manner, it doesn't matter the temporal amount of time I'm there, how they, what they feel usually feels longer. And so there again, the purpose of this is not to turn people into comedians or uh, like start cracking jokes left and right. Uh, it's the goal is connection, and so and the the workshops don't involve medical scenarios unless it just comes up. because the idea is that these skills of connecting are applicable in any aspect of our life, but there's a heightened sense of stakes when someone's in the hospital or when they feel like they're not being heard. You really need to show that patient that you want to connect with them, and that skill set doesn't just pop up when you're at the hospital and then like you leave it at the door when you go home. And so it's how do these skills live in lower stakes examples? Like I after the first workshop, the group came back for the second workshop, and I said, did anyone practice yes and the person that raised their hand was like, yeah, I did it with my son, and it was really helpful. It turned an interaction where I would have kind of scolded him and yelled at him into a fun one where I got the same results, and I've had a much more positive interaction with my son. And so that,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah. And so it was a healthcare improv workshop that helped the person get on better with their son. And so I feel like that kind of tests the skill set that maybe they try that in maybe the higher stakes situation when they're interacting with a patient or a family member.
I love that. Sorry, I was picturing in my head for a little bit like a doctor coming in and trying to be a comedian and being like, "What's the deal with these bright lights?" Huh?
Yeah,
Or like
yeah. Have you
picking
seen
up
this?
the yeah, picking up the like the little ear thing and like looking
Yeah,
through it, like, "Ooh,"
yeah,
just being
yeah,
silly. Like that.
yeah.
That would be a very strange encounter. So yeah, we don't need
Yes,
comedian doctors.
no, no, and that that is why I think improv is an especially good skill set for healthcare providers to learn rather than like stand up comedy. I think stand up comedy has its own side benefits, but
Oh
the
yeah.
the humor in improv comes from uh, connection and kind of building a reality together, and it's about having fun rather than being funny. And so the same skill set allows me to connect with my patients, which I find meaningful. And I think most people who got into healthcare, the idea of connecting with patients is something that they find meaningful or is worth going through all that schooling and whatnot, with the end goal of connecting with patients or colleagues to information. That's increases meaning, even though it may not necessarily be funny or humorous, but the same skill set, I think, is very applicable.
I love that. And I love the takeaway from the parents learning how to better communicate with their child too, just to go back to that other example. Cause I had that come up. I did a session, just general, like guided improvisation for laughter, fun, and creativity. And we did a yes and exercise, talked about yes and mindset. And someone said, "Oh, this will help me talk to my kids better and play with them more and be able to use my imagination more. Like if they ask me to play, I won't be like, oh, I don't know. Like I can actually be a part of their reality and like and add to what they're creating." And I was like, I've never thought of that. I'm not a parent. Like that just didn't come to me as a takeaway. So that's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. I do think it. I'm obviously biased. I suspect you are as well. But you start seeing it applicable to all sorts of areas of life, um, where it could be practiced and to a benefit of both people.
Yeah. Well, I want to take a super quick break. I know we're it's like 50 minutes in, we're taking a break, but we have not talked much about public speaking yet. And I want to talk to you more about public speaking a little bit too and find out more about your journey there. So let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, and we're back, and we're going to switch gears a little bit to public speaking, which, Mike, you alluded to earlier that you were asked to do a public speaking segment on body language, and you didn't feel your public speaking skills were that great to lead a workshop on that. Can you tell me a little bit about your public speaking journey? So you didn't like it or didn't feel you were good at it early on?
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey. So when I was chief resident in New Orleans, we did a ton of education. So I would do like a 15-minute lecture once a week in front of 50 to 100 people. but they were all people that I kind of knew and would joke around with. And so if I said something stupid, it would just be fun. And so that I was initially very nervous for, but you do so much of it, you kind of get over the humps. And I would play music beforehand. And so that would be kind of a fun little entryway into it.
Yeah, nice.
But then I came back to Nebraska and it was all new environments, and I'm the new person, and just that sense of I don't want to look stupid was
Mm-hmm.
very much going through my brain. And so I had a couple really bad lectures that the voice cracked, trailed off, all the good stuff. And then that's also when I started taking improv classes, and the sense that the sense of confidence I got from taking improv or performing on stage helped me a little bit with the public speaking aspect when I was asked to do it, and kind of talking to myself like, okay, you can do this. You can do this. It's fine.
Like
But
hands on hips, affirming, like,
yeah, like,
I am
come on,
Superman.
Mike.
Like, I
Yeah.
got this. I can do this. I don't care what
Yeah.
these people think. Oh, I've done all of
Yeah.
those. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I would say it did not, uh, it did not move me from really bad to really good. It moved me from really bad to like, I think this person's just kind of bad. And I would say that first time that I told people that I did improv and got through that lecture was probably just fine. But in my head, it was kind of a catastrophe. And I questioned, like, do I even really want to do this? Like, well, I told everyone that I do improv now. Like, I have to keep doing it. And so that kind of sense of chaos was just, I had crossed the threshold, like in my head. To at that point, I had crossed it. I need to get better at this. And so I think had I not said yes to that opportunity, I would still be languishing in poor public speaking. I feel like I'm on an upward trend now, and I've gone to a couple public speaking workshops, and everything they say was related to improv, like seeing it as a performance as opposed to like a core of who you are. Like when I'm speaking in front
Mm-hmm.
of people, it's not Mike Smith that's being evaluated. It's this performance. It's like, okay, I can do a performance, and I want to make this performance as good as I can for the people that I'm giving it to, and change that focus to how do I make it as entertaining and beneficial as possible for the people listening, as opposed to like, how do I make myself look smart? How do I not look stupid is probably how most of the conversation goes for me, actually. And so a lot of people, I think you said you took improv as a way to get better at public speaking. I think I was kind of the reverse, in that I needed to get better at public speaking to talk more about improv. Uh,
Nice.
yeah, but it's been invaluable in terms of uh, getting better at, and pushing me to read about it and explore resources about all manners of communication, public communication among them.
I love that phrasing of how it's a performance and you're entertaining, or whatever your goal is, you're informing, persuading, entertaining your audience. So it's not about you, it's about them. It's about
Hmm.
the audience. It's not, what do I look like? What do I sound like? What are my eyes doing? What's my face doing right now? Like, what are they thinking about me? Oh God, I said something stupid. I mean, that's all the things that the inner critic says. And
Yeah,
learning to quiet that inner critic while I'm talking and speaking has been huge for me.
yeah,
And that perception of, it's not about me and my inner critic, it is them. And also there might be someone that's going, what the heck is this lady talking about? I don't get it. Well, that's just one person. Like, what is the whole
yeah,
room feeling? That's fine too.
yeah. Like generally, it's not a group of people like looking at me like, I hope this guy fails. Like I hope
Right.
this stinks. I hope he keeps tripping over his words and saying and like a whole bunch.
Yeah.
Like most people are rooting for me. And so take that energy and use it. And
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and reading about emotion and how we process emotion, that I definitely recognize. So before public speaking, one person could feel like the racing heart rate and maybe some sweating is a sign that things are bad or I'm in trouble or the crowd's gonna turn on me. But the same signs could be used, someone could interpret as excitement. And so reframing those sensations with a different label as excitement or here we go or it's I'm looking forward to this, those things, which again I read about as part of understanding improv and why it's beneficial, and so that reframing I think has helped me quite a bit.
Yeah, and normalizing it too. Like the fact that
Hmm.
you get off stage, whether you're doing improv or speaking or whatever you're doing, recording a podcast, and you're sweaty and you're red faced and like your heart's pumping, like your body has done a lot. That's normal. Like it is normal to
Yeah.
sweat while you're speaking because you're in that flow state. Like you're kind of on, like your body's doing a lot of work, but you're not focusing on that. You're focusing on your mind and like what you're trying to say and connecting with the audience. So you're not noticing the sweat and stuff. It's until you get done and then you're like, oh God, I'm so sweaty. And that's
Yeah.
totally fine.
Yeah. They the public speaking workshop I went to, they specifically mentioned like, yeah, it's just fine to have pit stains. Don't worry about it.
Well, that's why a lot of improvisers, at least I've noticed, wear black on stage,
Yeah.
so that I assume because of
Right.
that too.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you have kind of learned to at least enjoy public speaking as a means to teach improv. Like, would you say that you love public speaking, or at least you can get through it now?
Oh yeah, it's definitely not love. It is more than I can get through it, but I don't know what it's going to take for me to flat out love it, but the it I find the opportunities that I get related to talk about healthcare and improv, I find it very enjoyable. And so it it's more than a necessary evil, but it's kind of closer to that realm. Like I just have to do it. And there's not really another way around it.
Do you find like this common feeling towards public speaking in a lot of your coworkers, doctors, physicians? Do a lot of people seem to feel the same about public speaking?
I don't know that they necessarily have the nervous aspect that I was dealing with. I do think physicians, healthcare professionals, scientists could stand from public speaking education as a way to get their message out. I think we have grand rounds
Mm-hmm.
every week, and they're just filled with very smart people with very interesting things to say, made about as boring as possible. And so I think for if you're involved at all in disseminating knowledge, teaching, I think you would benefit from improving your public speaking, just for your own good and for the good of your message, I would say. So similar to me, that there is a call to action that needs to happen. I think for most people.
Yeah, and I wonder too, just because you obviously practice a lot of presentations. I mean, you give a lot of presentations in research in your field. I assume you probably have to present, but maybe it's that you, at least this is my experience. Like I gave a lot of presentations in school, but I always got a grade for the project, but never got feedback on the speaking and how it went. So I kind of just went through my life going, oh, well, I'm just going to get through it. I hate doing this. I'm going to get through it. But if I had some, like a teacher say, hey, like your project was good, your information was good, I want to give you some suggestions on how to improve your speaking, I think that would have helped instead of just like, well, I got an A on it. Great. I
Yeah.
snuck past that one, got through that one. Great. I don't know. So I don't know if my experience can relate to yours, but just, yeah, that education piece probably could help.
Yeah. I think so many aspects of the way that we are educated affect these things. So I have a team of med students and residents, and I'll just ask them questions to see where their knowledge is at. And they almost always answer in the form of a question. They say, "Is it this?" And I always say,
Mm,
"Do I look like Alex Trebek?" Or like, "Why are we
right.
answering in the form of a question?" And I think it's because we're socialized to be afraid of being wrong, or like that grade is the end all be all, and so that changes the way we interact and communicate. Whereas we'd be better off thinking and giving the best possible answer and learning why we missed it, or what led us to get it right, rather than kind of protecting our ego. And so, like, is it mitochondria? Uh, and
What
so,
is mitochondria?
yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you. You have the board. Uh, so yeah, I think that happens every month that I have a new team, that people start answering in the form of questions. And I think it's exactly what you said, that idea of I just, for the grade, I'm doing something for the
Mm-hmm.
grade, and that's kind of how we're judged. And if there's anything outside of that, like if I get better at it, then fine. But if not, I'll deal with it when it comes up, which is how public speaking, I think, ends up being such a problem for people. Like, they don't have a need for it, and all of a sudden they have to do it in front of 100 people who they think are going to judge them. And so that skill set doesn't just like pop, like, oh, okay, I guess I'm going to public speak now. It's I think it's
Mm-hmm.
something that has to be developed, or like you do enough of it that you get better at it while understanding the principles. But healthcare professionals don't generally have to do a ton of public speaking, and so by the time they do enough research or teaching or whatnot, it's already kind of a higher stakes than they would maybe be comfortable with, I would
Okay.
suspect, for a lot of people. It's not like it's not a communications major where they're kind of giving talks and um, things throughout their education. Like, I maybe had to give one or two presentations in college that were horrible, but information was fine, and so kept it moving.
You got a good grade, I assume.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That's interesting. And yeah, I know you focus more on like one-on-one or kind of doctor to patient, nurse to patient interaction, that one-on-one. And yeah, I always did really well one-on-one. I did personal training, working with clients
hmm,
one-on-one, or if there were two of them, one-on-two, like easy. But then put me in a room
yeah,
of 10 people, five people or more, and I have to like stand up, and I'm the only one standing, and like I just have like I freeze, like I struggle, and
yeah,
I could feel that. So there are skills that can work with both, but also you kind of have to just practice and put yourself in both of those situations to get better at them.
yeah, yeah. I agree. The Someone called it being an ambivert. Like, I'm an extrovert
Oh,
around my friends, or like with one on one, but in a new environment or like public speaking, I become an introvert right when I need to be an extrovert.
right. I like that term, ambivert.
Yeah, it's quite. Someone said it, and I was like, yes, that is defining me.
Yes. Well, and I wanted to ask you, in October, you went to it was like a TEDx talk, and they had a TED salon, you said. Um, First of all, what is a TED salon? And then what did you talk about for that one?
Yeah. So TEDx Omaha has monthly meetings that are still ideas worth spreading, but a different format. It wasn't 20 minutes of me talking about big vision ideas. It was talking about it was titled Life is Improvisation, but it was about the flow state that you mentioned, or the how we get to the point where we're doing something that's challenging but meets our skill level, and how improv sets the circumstances for flow to exist. And once I
Oh.
learned to enter flow in improv, it became easier to recognize in other areas of my life, and uh, kind of apply similar principles or set up the same circumstances to be in flow. And the idea of flow came from a guy named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, which he died last year, and I learned that people just called him Mike C, which would have been way
Oh.
easier to know before I started talking about him. But he interviewed thousands of people and found the people who were the happiest were the people who spent the most time in these flow states where they were doing something challenging, but their skills were matched up and were doing it just for the sake of doing it, or for the benefit of um, the activity unto itself. And so improv to me is a clear example of that activity that is worth doing unto itself. He calls them autotelic activities. And so you do them just to do them. And so that's how improv started for me when I got the lessons for Christmas way back when. It was just a fun activity for me to do to get out of the house. And so I think it does have all these other benefits that come with it, I think. And I think it's just a worthwhile activity to do because it's fun.
I love that talk and demonstration you did on flow state. And I wonder too if we can get into flow state because our inner critic is turned off or we're not listening to it. Is that a piece of it?
Yeah. And it's you're focused on the task at hand. And
Mm-hmm.
they've done functional MRI studies, I believe, where your frontal lobe, which is executive function and is basically the home of your inner critic, is kind of shut off. And so you're focused on the task at hand and what you have to do. And so it's exactly as you said, your inner critic takes a breather and just lets you do the things that you know how to do and meet the challenges that are there for you. So it it was a topic that I was more than happy to discuss because it's helped me kind of get into the flow state at work. And so as I think it was the second one that they had since kind of taking a break with them for the pandemic. And so we were looking at maybe doing some more in the spring about how improv can relate to the different aspects of our life.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I hope one day you can stand on that red dot and
Yeah,
give your ideas for talk about your ideas for 20 minutes. Would you be up for that? Public speaking wise, that's a big one.
that is a big one, and I think again, I have to, like, if
Yeah.
yeah, it, I do think it is an idea worth spreading. It's
Mm-hmm.
improv has
I
helped me
agree.
tremendously, help me help patients better, help me enjoy my work better, help me be a better husband, be a better father, all these things. It's not like I'm thinking improv while I'm doing it. It's skills that have kind of just naturally occurred that only in hindsight do I notice, like, oh yeah, I'm better at that, or that went better than it might have a few years ago.
Yes, absolutely. I feel that like probably 5 years ago in a different job. I'm still in the same like wellness career. My boss would ask me something like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" or "How should we do this?" Like brainstorming wise, I'd be like, "Oh, don't put me on the spot. Like I need time to think about it. Like give me a
Yeah,
day. I'll come back to you. Let me mull it over."
right.
And while those are good skills to have, it means I'm not super emotional, which is why I struggle with emotions in improv too. But
Yeah,
not super emotional. However, I wasn't allowing myself to even brainstorm because I didn't want to look stupid or give a stupid idea. So I wouldn't even share. I'd have to think and give the best ideas. So just that skill of like, put me on the spot. Like, question and answer Q&A period, yeah, throw it at me. If I don't know the
Sure.
answer, I'll tell
Yeah.
you. Like
Yeah.
Q&A periods don't scare me like they used to now.
Right. Yeah. For me at least, that's all improv. Like that does not
Mm-hmm.
occur in my life without me being in some circumstance where I become okay, like rapid fire, learn to be okay with that. And improv
Yeah.
practice shows that is all rapid fire, being okay with that, and learn that you made it. Like no one died when you said something silly, or like you thought back. Like there's still times where I think of shows where I just I did not make the right choice, or there's such a better choice just like
Mm-hmm.
right in front of me and I didn't take it. But that's more of a learning experience rather than I'm bad, or I'm
Right.
a bad person.
Well, I think the stakes too, like for me when I did Toastmasters and even like any speech, it kind of felt like this is the speech that I'm going to have to give. Like this is it. And now I'm like, I give speeches all the time. Like, if I mess up, there's going to be another speech. If I mess up
Yeah.
in improv, there's going to be another scene. There's going to be another class. There's going to be another show. Like, it's not as detrimental of an effect. Like, I messed up. Oh no, that sucked. Like, okay, let's get
Yeah.
the next one.
Yeah. I forget who talked about it, but the idea of an inner coach as opposed to inner critic,
Oh, I like
like,
that.
because it's still worthwhile to look back at those things and like, well, what led me down, like having an outside perspective, looking at it to kind of push you to develop, I think is worthwhile. But as you said, the idea that there's going to be a next one, because I bet there were multiple speeches with Toastmasters, but the kind of heightened sense of those ones kind of made you feel like mistakes could be fatal or could ruin the whole thing.
Yeah, that's true. Were always more. I guess I wasn't signed up for them, and then just
Yeah.
the expectation of like, I want this to be good. You know what it was? Like, I want this to be the speech where I say, I have conquered my fear of public speaking. Like, I
Yeah.
love public speaking. I want this speech to
Yeah.
be the speech that like gets me over the hump. And I don't think I ever had the
Yeah.
speech that did that. I think it was over time that I like learned to say, I love public speaking and not just say it, like actually feel it. Like, I really
Yeah.
do enjoy public speaking, but I didn't have the moment where that
Right.
happened.
Like I have reached the end of public speaking. I have conquered.
Right. I am now an improv god. I can
Yeah.
do all of like I haven't had that moment yet either. And
Right.
to be honest, I
Yeah.
don't think that's going to come from one show, one class, one practice. It's going to be an overtime thing.
Yeah. That's early on in like level 1 or level 2. My teacher said the nice thing about a really bad improv show is it's done, it's over, and it's on to the next one. Unfortunately, it's the same thing for a really good one. Like you just have to you enjoy
Mm-hmm.
the good ones, you learn from the bad ones, and you go to the next one. And I think that's at the core of how improv can benefit those public speaking skills.
Yeah, switching gears a bit, I wanted to ask you just with the pandemic, I mean, it happened, it's still kind of going on, whatever, wherever we are in it. Has that changed how you teach improv? Because you were teaching workshops before the pandemic and now kind of on the other side of it. Like, have you changed your way of teaching or how you talk about it at all?
Yeah, it obviously changed because everything changed.
Yeah,
So
good answer.
I, yeah, thank you. The I did a set of workshops at the start of 2020, and then the world shut down. And in the 2020 to 2021, we planned as if we were going to do a full. I have 8 workshops that I do every year here at the University of Nebraska, and so we planned the whole year we're going to do that. And I think we got to do 4 of them just because there would be a surge, and it was like maybe,
Mm, hmm.
and it was in masks, and then some people were on Zoom and some people were live, and so kind of
That's
navigating that,
tough.
yeah,
Hybrid
was
is tough for
yeah,
improv workshops. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so it was a challenge, but I would say, again, like anything, it was a learning experience. Specifically, as long as there's not another pandemic, I don't want to do hybrid workshops. Uh,
Right.
but I could do it, and I think there are benefits to it still. And I did a couple only Zoom improv workshops that were good, but not as good as in person. And kind of coming, we're not out of the pandemic, but maybe on the other side of the worst of it, perhaps. The importance of the ideas to me is burning ever brighter. The sense of connection and the importance of connection, and the like deliberately seeking out connection with patients and with colleagues, I think is now as important as it's ever been in my lifetime. And so it makes me more passionate about the ideas that we're kind of exploring with improv and the skill set that it promotes.
Yeah, and I know burnout was so high amongst just in general in healthcare workers having to work extra shifts and just so much going on. And I don't know how much you experienced with that or your hospital, your team, but do you mostly focus just on like communication skills? Do you bring in any kind of like burnout talk in your workshops too?
Yeah. And I think next February, the workshops are wellness and growth mindset,
Oh,
um,
nice.
are the themes for the ones next February. The kind of related to the COVID pandemic, it kind of has people in their own information bubble, and kind of things are heightened in a certain sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so last August, I got COVID for the second time. And I was talking to my mom saying, yeah, I'm fine. Everything's good. And she's like, she started dishing out advice that there's really no other way to describe it other than misinformation.
Oh
But
no.
uh, I was like, okay. Uh, and it took me a second. And she knows I'm a doctor. She knows I've treated hundreds of patients with COVID.
Right,
Um,
right.
and so saying yes to her reality is not necessarily saying yes to the treatments she was prescribing. It's saying yes to the idea that she wants to be a mom and wants to help me and just wants me to feel better and cares about me. So that's the easier reality to say yes to. And so the next week, I had a patient. We still had fairly strict COVID visitor policies. And then a 20-year-old kid who had been chronically sick was about to have his birthday. And
Mm.
his dad was kind of uh, mean to the nurses and the administration about our visitor policies, and like saying, I'm going to celebrate my son's birthday, and we're all going to be there for my son. And it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of a mean way, it's kind of yelling, which
Right.
I think causes stress for sure. Um, and uh, those type of things contribute to providers feeling burnt out. Like, why do I have to deal with this? I just want to treat the patient. Now I'm worrying about a birthday celebration and like
I'm being
organizing all
yelled
those things.
at and I'm just doing my best. Yeah.
Right. And in that sense, and that contributes to burnout. And so had I not had that experience of saying yes to my mom, just wanting to be my mom, I might have taken that approach. I think it's reasonable to say this is not what I signed up for as a healthcare provider to deal with all this. But being able to say yes to the reality that this man just wants to be a father to his son who's been chronically sick and wants to celebrate his birthday, acknowledging that and building from there, as opposed to build it like starting from the walled reality of I don't deserve this. Both
Mm-hmm.
may be true, but those skills of improv help me connect better with my mom. That help me better uh, find a way, an agreeable way that is less draining on me and helps the patient in that moment.
I love the empathy you had, kind of step back and have like an empathetic moment coming and streaming from yes and mindset. And that was actually my final question for you is like yes and or growth mindset. How do you embody a yes and or growth mindset in your life? And I know you just gave that example, but any other
Yeah.
any other
We-
examples to add to that?
yeah, I think it's led to a more curious way of being, like learning more things, and the acknowledgement that, kind of going back to when I improved in the patient satisfaction scores, and then the realization like, oh, I thought I was already good at that.
Right.
So the more you yes and, the more you kind of start to realize areas that you don't know. And so and building off something that someone gives you, like, so if someone gives you a piece of feedback that you don't particularly like, that actually happened. So the first time I did the growth mindset workshop, we got our year-end evaluations, and one person gave me very bad scores, and it dragged the
Mm-hmm.
whole average down.
Oh yeah.
And I knew who the person was, and I spent a lot of time trying to get on the same page with them, but I just did not get on the same page with them. And then they tanked my average, and that affects if I get a top teacher award, which is not nothing, but it's not an end all be all, but it's something professionally that I'm striving towards. And
Yeah,
this
of
one
course.
evaluation totally tanked it. And again, my initial response was to be so irate with that person. And I think that's correct. I think also the approach of, well, what did I do wrong, or how can I connect with a learner with similar issues better in the future? I've done that, and that has helped me become a much better physician. And so that to me is that, had I not had improv or like, what's the piece that I can, like on improv, in an improv stage, we find what's a piece that I can have fun with or work with or want to explore more.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I think I remain bitter at that person without improv. Improv said, well, what's the piece that I can take and grow?
I love that. Basically, in those examples you shared with your mom and that coworker and such, that evaluator, you didn't get defensive. You wanted to. You initially felt
Yeah.
very defensive. You're like the
Yes.
defensive part came out, all swords and weapons drawn, ready to go to battle and say your piece. That is valid too. But you took a step back and kind of asked yourself how to handle the situation better, which probably, I'm going to assume and guess, had a better outcome in the end, rather than letting your defensiveness take over and
Yeah.
ego take over.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's infinitely, I can count 3 or 4 specific examples of when I thought about that negative feedback and use it to improve how I was an educator to medical students or residents. And so again, that negative moment, I think I would be within my rights to be frustrated with that person. And also, I think taking a different approach will benefit me infinitely more, to kind of say, well, how can I grow from that?
I haven't looked at yes and or a growth mindset like that before. That's a really interesting take. For me, this goes back to the sports mindset of like, I want to take
Mm-hmm.
this class and this class and this class and get better at this and grow here and here. The idea of kind of growing emotionally, I haven't really considered. It's really interesting. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, yeah. And as I said, I don't think I get there without improv. Like, however I am now, I would be much worse off without improv, right? And that's another kind of aspect that I think is beneficial. No matter where you are, I think practicing the skills of improv can move you down whatever skill spectrum you're discussing. Like listening, I'm a infinitely better listener than I was 8 years ago, but I'm still not an exemplar of being a great listener.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like your wife gave the best gift, the gift that keeps on giving. Is she like, oh, more improv?
Yeah,
Like,
it definitely had a valley where she was excited that I was happy, and then I was like going to shows and practices and whatnot, and she's like, "Oh my god!" But then I I have become a much better communicator with her, and as I said, a better father, and it's impacted me in those ways tremendously. So we're kind of climbing back. Like, okay,
has she done it? Has she taken any classes too?
she's not. She kind of rolls her eyes at me when I tell her, like, there's a time this past summer where we had a show the night before, and we were going to dinner in an Uber. And I was like, the show was really funny last night. Like, I think it was a really good show. And she's like, whatever, and did, like, her eyes almost rolled out of the car. They rolled so hard. We get to the restaurant and we walk in, and at the bar, someone that we don't know spots me and is like, oh, oh, and was like, we were at your show last night. It was great. And I was
What?
like,
That's
Sarah,
awesome.
will you meet these fine people?
Maybe you'll listen to
um,
them
yeah.
and their
Oh,
take.
thank you so much. And so, yeah, so that was great. Just that my wife got to experience that. And that night we were going to a high school friend's birthday party. And I told everyone that I saw that I was recognized in Omaha for my comedy. And
Yeah,
so,
that's huge. That's awesome.
yeah,
That's the next level up. Like that's a milestone for sure.
I mean, it was huge. And I know you're not supposed to care about those things, but I really just enjoy it a lot.
No, celebrate all the wins. That's a
Yeah.
win. That is such a
Yeah.
win. And not just not going, oh no, like it was nothing. Like it was just a show. It's fun. Like not like no butting their nice comments, their
Yeah.
feedback. Like you're saying, yes, thank you. Like just saying thank you is so hard sometimes too. So celebrating that is important.
Yeah. Like learning how to take a compliment. I've also been on
Yes.
a journey with that and improv, like the idea of yes and not just like, well, you have a nice shirt on today as well. Like just saying thank you for the nice thing that person said.
I love that. My husband and I take classes together just so that we don't have to be like, oh, so and so did this funny thing in class. Oh, you had to be there. Oh, you
Yeah.
missed it. But
Yeah.
it is really vulnerable. I talk about this too, but it in other episodes, but it is really vulnerable to do it with your spouse or significant other because we're
Yeah.
both struggling. This is new to both of us. It's hard. It's really hard
Yeah.
to suspend disbelief and like have our scenes together are not good.
That'd be a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a challenge. And then I feel like one of us might have a good, quote unquote, good show or class or practice. And then the other one's like in their head going, oh, that was dumb. That's stupid. And so we're never both like happy or satisfied.
Yeah.
It's always flip flopped.
That's I mean, I think that's a really cool journey that the two of you are going on too, because like just the experiencing it together, I think provides way more insight. Like you almost get double the insight in sharing it. Cause I've definitely had shows where I didn't think I performed well, but everyone else walks off just excited and that like, how do I feel about this? Or like, how do I process this? To do that with your partner, I think has got to be next level. Like,
It's a learning. It's a journey. Yeah, we're on
yeah, yeah,
an interesting journey, but it's fun. Whatever route you take, it's fun. But it's nice that it's so cool that she started this journey for you,
yeah,
and you didn't know but that gift and go, why do you think I need improv
yeah,
classes? Like,
yeah.
why did you get this for
Yeah,
me? What are you
I'm,
trying to say here?
yeah, I'm funny enough already.
Right.
How could I get even more funny?
Well, if anyone's looking for a nice gift, look for your local theater because you never know what an improv class will do for someone.
Yeah, changed my life. So
Yeah, that's incredible. This conversation has been so fun, fascinating. I love, we could talk about improv all day, and we certainly tried to do so. But I know our listeners are listening and maybe learning more about healthcare improv, medical improv. So where can they find out more about you?
Yeah, on LinkedIn, where we met, Michael Smith. On Instagram and Twitter, it's HCare Improv. And then Facebook, I think it's Healthcare Improv. And then the website is healthcareimprov.com. And I write, try to do it at least weekly about how improv intersects with my life in the healthcare field.
Yeah, your articles are really good too.
Oh, thanks.
I enjoy reading those. They always give a really cool insight and perspective. I think you had one recently about books and how you tied together like reading and these classical books with improv.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a space for me to put down what I'm thinking and take in different bits of culture at the time and how it all applies to all the things in my life that I think is beneficial.
That's awesome. And you have you're teaching some level 1 classes. So you teach classes for healthcare professionals at the theater, right?
Yeah. So my next level 1 class starts February 6th in Omaha. And then I also do the workshops are like 25% improv, 75% how does this relate to our job? The
Oh,
class
interesting.
ends up being 75% improv, 25% how does this relate to our job? And at the end of it's an 8-week class, and at the end they have a show, and
Yes.
it's always so funny and such a great experience that it's fun to watch.
My first one-on-one show, it was February 2020, so right before the pandemic. But we
Right
did
in
our
there.
one-on-one show, got it in there. It was 30 minutes long. I think I might have been in like 5 minutes of scenes and stuff. Just, it was short
Great.
form games. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
great. And then we did like a 6-hour after party after, like, went out and got drinks, then got dinner after. I mean, we all hung out, and a lot of us
Yeah.
continued on. And then the pandemic tried to ruin that, of course. But
Right.
the after party, I think, was more fun than the show too.
Yeah. It's that's a definite reason to get into improv. It's a fun group of people that are all geared towards accepting you as you are. So it's pretty easy and friend. Like you said, the applied improv group online. It's people with that kind of mindset who want to support you and are actively practicing how they can support you. And so it ends up being a pretty fun group.
Yeah, that's awesome. Any conferences, presentations to plug?
Yeah, I think we're going to do an event for the Nebraska chapter of the American College of Physicians
Oh,
on
nice.
February 1st. The details are kind of being worked out for that. So check. Sure, I'll blast it all over social media. But that's here in Omaha. And then, yeah, I have a very busy January and February. It's like one thing after another. But those are the kind of big things that people still have an opportunity to sign up for.
I was going to say your February is really busy with Mardi Gras too, because that's right in mid-February. Do you know what float you're on yet, or we could share on social media too when you
Yeah,
know?
I do not know. I forget our theme as well, or what our float theme is. But yeah, comment on social media, and then you and I will find you and throw something at you.
Oh, for sure. I will definitely. I'll come find you, which is so fun because it's like I'm talking to you now, but it's like I know someone who's on a float, and then I
Yeah,
want to say hello to them
yeah,
as they're like going through all this stuff, and then
yeah.
they're gonna
Like,
throw me junk and stuff,
yeah,
and it's all just because you know someone. Like, it's such a
yeah.
funny mentality. I was thinking about it the other day.
It is on its face so silly, but again, once you get in it, you'll be just as much a part of it. Like once you're there, it's if you've been there, you know exactly what's happening.
you're cool, quote unquote cool, if you know someone in the parade. You're like,
Right.
hey, float
Yeah.
19, neutral ground side, which no one knows what neutral ground is except if
Right.
you're in New Orleans. That's the median side. Neutral ground
Yeah.
side, fifth rider. Okay, I know that person. Everyone shout Mike as they
Yeah.
roll by. Make sure
Yeah.
he sees like
It conveys status in the whole
a
celebration.
status amongst the crowd that I
Right.
know someone. So it's that
Exactly.
drama, that Southern drama, right? That
Yeah.
your son has.
Yeah. That he got infused with.
Yeah, I don't know my float number yet either. I just know I'm on the title float, which is like right after like the queen and the maids and stuff. So I'm pretty early on, but I will be
Awesome.
posting my position too for friends to find me, and I'll
Yeah.
toss you a stuffed animal and a football and maybe a fanny pack. I only have like a few, so if you get a fanny
Okay.
pack, you're pretty special.
All right. Yeah. I will relish in my status of knowing.
Right. Mike, thank you so much for being on. Again, we talked about improv a lot, and we could go on more. I look forward to meeting you in person. I hope our paths connect, and we can meet in person at a conference or something, and spread the ideas of improv. The more improv, the merrier, right? So hopefully,
Yeah.
we get on a conference or something together. South by
Yeah.
Southwest at some point,
That's
right?
right. We're coming in 2024.
Yeah. Thanks again so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dana.
And thank you to our listeners today for joining us for this episode, for listening in. Truly appreciate you. Hope this was really helpful to hear. Even if you're not a healthcare professional, it's really cool to see how the skills and techniques of improv can relate to many different professions. I focus on corporate clients for team building and communication skills, but to see how it can impact healthcare professionals is huge. I mean, we've all been to the doctor. We've all probably felt like we haven't been heard or our problems haven't been understood. And it's just better communication and not rushing through and actually trying to sit and connecting with your patients. And it's cool to see that growing more, medical improv. And there are a good bit of studies coming out now about medical improv. I've seen some with medical schools adding an improv class to their curriculum to help the medical students before they get into the field. They can gain these skills. That's awesome. That would be great if we could have these classes in all of our curriculums, because these are such great life skills, essential skills that we need to connect better as humans. I know I keep saying it, but it's really cool. It's just so cool to see the application of it. I also liked Mike's story about how he was asked to talk about body language, and he was like, I feel like I shouldn't be the one to talk about body language, but he certainly was qualified. He was leading the improv exercises that can help with body language, and it's just so interesting how we always talk ourselves out of things that we can do and that we should do. And I'm glad he did it. And I'm glad he succeeded and is still doing this and offering these sessions to healthcare teams. So I want to throw it out to you, ask you, how do you see these skills of communication and connection impacting your life? For my improviser friends, I'm sure you could say, it's huge. I've gained these skills in improv. It's great. But for my non improviser friends, how do you see communication and connection really affecting your life and making it better or worse? Do you focus on communication and connection in your meetings with people, if you're in the corporate world or with whatever your job is? Is this a focus for you? Or would you like to focus on it more? It's definitely something to think about and reflect on. And in situations that are a bit heated, like Mike mentioned an example of a father in a hospital who was very upset because he wanted his son to celebrate his birthday, but it was during COVID. Had Mike reacted and matched his reaction and his anger, and he got upset, it probably would have added fuel to the fire and it just would have escalated the situation. But since he realized this is a dad who wants to just be there for his son, he came in with more empathy when he communicated with him, and that, I'm assuming, de-escalated the situation. So it's really important to think about these things and how we are communicating and connecting with others. I'm not great at it all the time, but it's always something to think and reflect on. Let me know if anything came up for you, anything resonated with you in this episode. And I'm always willing to chat and hear your stories. You can reach out to me at dana@improvislyspeaking.com. That's DAYNA @improvislyspeaking.com. You can also find me on social media at improvislyspeaking on Instagram. On LinkedIn, I'm Dana Gowan. And my website is improvislyspeaking.com for more information about myself and my services and why I love improv so much. I'm really enjoying this podcast journey. As I mentioned before, I met Mike on LinkedIn because I submitted a proposal for South by Southwest, which I knew was an absolute long shot. And I figured I wouldn't get accepted, and that was fine. But I got to meet Mike out of it, and now we support each other's businesses, and I think that's the coolest thing. So even if you think something's a long shot and you're like, there's no way I'm going to get accepted, there's no way that this outcome will happen, well, maybe there's a cooler and different outcome that can happen, but you don't know until you try. So why not? Just try it and see what happens. All right, that's it for today. Thanks again for listening and supporting Improvly Speaking. Truly appreciate you, truly grateful, and I'm so happy you're here. I look forward to talking to you next time.